what happens when the galaxy's most feared predators discover that humanity's greatest strength isn't technology, weapons, or numbers, but the terrifying fact that humans never, ever give up. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Coalition maintained peace through one simple rule: never harm a human settlement, not because humans were powerful, not because they had advanced technology, but because of what happened the last time someone broke that rule. The Zephyrian Empire thought that rule was just superstition, ancient fear-mongering from a primitive species barely worthy of notice. They had conquered 47 star systems. Their fleet had never known defeat. What could one small human colony possibly do against the might of their armada? They were about to find out why the rest of the galaxy whispered warnings about sleeping giants and why some rules exist for very good reasons. When the Zephyrians attacked New Eden Colony, they didn't just break a treaty, they awakened something that had been waiting in the dark corners of space for centuries, something that every alien species had hoped would stay asleep forever. Because humans don't just fight back, they come for you. All of you. Every last one. And they never stop coming. The morning sun of Kepler, the art of concentrated colonies in the great BC acceleration. The steam rose gently in the cool air while she watched her 8-year-old daughter Emma chase their dog Rex through the golden stalks. It was a perfect morning on humanity's most distant agricultural world, located 14 light-years from Earth in what the Galactic Coalition called the Outer Rim. Sarah had no idea it would be the last peaceful morning her daughter would ever know. "Mom, look," Emma called out, holding up a strange purple flower she had found growing wild near the irrigation canal. "It's got sparkles on it." "That's beautiful, sweetheart," Sarah replied, though her attention was caught by something else entirely. A faint streak of light had appeared in the eastern sky, growing brighter by the second. At first, she thought it might be a meteor, but the trajectory was wrong. Too controlled. Too purposeful. Rex started barking, placing into dozens of smaller lights, each one glowing with an ominous red tint that made Sarah's stomach clench with sudden dread. She had lived on New Eden for 12 years, ever since the Colony Development Program had recruited her expertise in sustainable farming. In all that time, she had never seen anything like this. "Emma, come inside," she called, trying to keep the worry out of her voice. But Emma was transfixed by the lights, which were now clearly visible as spacecraft descending through the atmosphere. They moved in perfect formation, sleek and predatory, like sharks cutting through deep water. Broadcasts from the core worlds to recognize military vessels. When she saw them, her blood turned to ice. Her blood turned to ice. "Emma, now!" The sharp edge in her mother's voice finally broke through Emma's fascination. The little girl ran back toward the house, Rex at her heels, just as the first of the alien ships passed directly overhead. The sound was like thunder being torn in half, a deep rumbling that Sarah felt in her bones. The coffee mug slipped from her trembling fingers, shattering on the wooden deck. Inside the house, Sarah's husband David was already at the communication console, his face pale as he tried to reach the colony's central command. The screen flickered with static, showing only fragments of frantic transmissions from other settlements across New Eden. Patricia, requesting immediate, "Why aren't they responding to?" The transmission cut to emergency broadcast mode, and Governor Patricia Wells appeared on screen. Even through the poor connection, Sarah could see the fear in the older woman's eyes. Wells had been governor of New Eden for 8 years, a steady hand who had guided the colony through crop failures, equipment breakdowns, and the occasional dispute with alien traders. But this was something entirely different. "XXO citizens of New Eden," Wells began, her voice carefully controlled. "We are currently experiencing an unscheduled arrival of foreign vessels in our airspace. These ships are not responding to standard communication protocols, and we have not received any advance notice of their visit from the Galactic Coalition Authority." David grabbed Sarah's hand as the first explosions began in the distance. They could see the orange glow on the horizon, where the main spaceport was located. The sound reached them seconds later, a deep rumble that rattled the windows. "All residents are advised to remain in your homes and await further instructions," Wells continued, but her voice was shaking now. "We are attempting to establish contact with these visitors and determine their intentions." The transmission ended, replaced by static. Emma pressed against her mother's side, clutching Rex's fur with white knuckles. "Mom, what's happening?" Sarah looked down at her daughter's frightened face and felt something break inside her chest. Emma was supposed to grow up here, in this peaceful place where the biggest dangers were drought seasons and equipment failures. She was supposed to run through these fields, go to school with the other colony children, maybe become a scientist or an engineer like her father. She was supposed to be safe. I don't know, baby, Sarah whispered, pulling Emma close. But everything's going to be okay. It was a lie, and they all knew it. The sound of approaching engines grew louder. Through the living room window, David could see 3 of the alien craft descending toward their section of the agricultural district. They were massive, each one easily the size of the colony's administration building, with a design unlike anything in the Coalition's databases. Sharp angles and red glowing vents gave them an aggressive, predatory appearance that made David's engineering mind catalog them immediately as warships. "We need to get to the shelter," he said, moving toward the emergency supplies they kept in the basement. Like all frontier colonists, they were prepared for natural disasters, equipment failures, even potential conflicts with hostile wildlife. But nothing had prepared them for this. The first alien ship landed in the field behind their house, crushing a season's worth of wheat under its massive landing struts. The sound of hydraulics hissed through the air as hatches opened along its hull. David caught a glimpse of movement inside. Figures in dark armor carrying weapons that glowed with the same red light as the ship's engines. "Basement," now, he ordered, and his family moved with practiced efficiency born from years of emergency drills. The basement of their farmhouse was well stocked with food, water, medical supplies, and a long-range communication array that David had built himself. As they huddled together in the reinforced space, he activated the emergency beacon that would send their location and status to Earth Command. Standard protocol required all human colonies to maintain such systems, though no one had ever expected to use them for anything more serious than a medical emergency. The message would take 4 years to reach Earth through conventional channels, but David had also activated something else, a quantum entanglement communicator that was officially restricted to government use. He had helped install the system when the colony was first established, and he had never forgotten the activation codes. The message would reach Earth instantaneously. Through the small basement window, Sarah could see shadows moving across their property. The alien soldiers moved with military precision, checking buildings and scanning the area with handheld devices. They were tall and lean, with elongated limbs and faces hidden behind helmets that reflected their surroundings like dark mirrors. Rex growled low in his throat, and Emma held him tighter. "David," Sarah whispered, "what do you think they want?" Before he could answer, the basement filled with red light as one of the scanning devices found them. A shadow fell across the window, and they heard the sound of boots on the wooden deck above. Heavy footsteps moved through their house, searching. David checked his watch. Quantum message would have reached Earth exactly 43 minutes ago. If the old protocols were still in place, if anyone was still monitoring those frequencies, if the automated systems still worked the way they were supposed to, a massive explosion shook the ground so powerful that dust rained down from the basement ceiling. Then another, and another. Through the chaos, they could hear screaming from the direction of the main settlement. Emma started to cry, and Sarah held her tighter, whispering reassurances that felt hollow in her own ears. This wasn't supposed to happen. New Eden was a peaceful farming colony, completely unimportant in galactic politics. They had no strategic value, no rare resources, nothing that would interest a military force, unless the attackers weren't interested in what the colony had, but in what it represented. The wooden floor above them creaked as the alien soldiers moved through their home. Sarah could hear them opening cabinets, checking rooms, methodically searching for any sign of the family that lived here. Soon, they would think to check the basement. David's hand moved to the emergency weapon he kept hidden behind the water heater, a simple projectile rifle that used chemical propellants instead of energy cells. Primitive by galactic standards, but reliable and quiet. You see, he had used it to protect their crops from the large herbivores that sometimes wandered too close to the fields. "If they come down here," he whispered to Sarah, "take Emma and go through the escape tunnel. Get to the Morrison place. Their shelter has better shielding. I'm not leaving you. You have to. For her." The footsteps stopped directly above them. A shaft of red light appeared in the stairwell as one of the aliens activated a scanner pointed downward. The device swept back and forth, mapping the basement's interior. David raised the rifle. The alien soldier appeared at the top of the stairs, weapon raised, scanner still in hand. For a moment, the two beings stared at each other across the basement. Human father and alien invader, each protecting what they saw as their own. The alien spoke. Its voice filtered through a translation device that turned its words into flat, emotionless English. Surrender. You will not be harmed if you comply. Get out of my house, David replied quietly. The alien tilted its head, as if confused by the response. You have no weapons capable of threatening us. Your resistance is pointless. This is my home, my family. Get out. What happened next would be transmitted back to the alien command ship to the soldiers' recording equipment. It would be analyzed by military strategists and intelligence officers who thought they understood human psychology. It would become part of the official record of the Zephyrian Empire's first contact with humanity in 3 millennia. It would also be the beginning of their doom. David fired, and chemical projectiles struck the alien soldier's center mass, punching through armor that was designed to stop energy weapons but had never been tested against primitive kinetic rounds. The soldier collapsed, ichor spreading across the basement floor. Alarms immediately began wailing from the alien ships outside. Voices shouted in languages that the translation software couldn't process quickly enough. To Buckingham, more soldiers would be coming. Go, David told his wife, pushing her toward the tunnel entrance hidden behind the storage shelves. Go now. Sarah hesitated for one heartbeat, looking into her husband's eyes and seeing everything he couldn't say. Then she grabbed Emma's hand and disappeared into the darkness of the escape tunnel, Rex close behind. David reloaded his rifle and waited. He didn't have to wait long. The quantum message that David had sent was already racing through a communication network that spanned the galaxy. It carried his family's biometric signatures, their location, and a simple automated distress code that hadn't been transmitted in over 3,000 years. The code that meant humans were under attack. On Earth, in a facility that didn't appear on any official maps, computers that had been waiting in standby mode for 3 millennia suddenly activated. Predation sequences, deep space monitoring stations that had been watching the void for centuries began changing their scanning patterns. And in the deepest levels of Luna Command, an artificial intelligence that had been dormant since the last Great War opened its electronic eyes and began to remember why it had been created. The Zephyrian Empire thought they were attacking a defenseless farming colony. They had no idea they had just awakened the Terran Defense Fleet. Admiral Helena Vasquez had been dead for exactly 47 minutes when the resurrection protocol activated. Her body lay in the stasis chamber, where it had rested for 216 years, preserved by technologies that the current human government had classified so deeply that even the existence of the classification was classified. The chamber hummed quietly in the darkness of Luna Command's level Omega, 3 kilometers beneath the moon's surface, in a facility that had been deleted from all official records after the Treaty of Centauri was signed. The quantum signal from New Eden changed everything. Emergency systems that hadn't functioned since the hegemony wars suddenly surged to life, drawing power from fusion reactors that had been running on standby for 3 centuries. Massive mechanical arms distended from the ceiling, their movements precise despite decades of inactivity. They began the delicate process of reversing cellular death, repairing tissue damage, and restarting biological functions that had been suspended at the moment of clinical termination. Helena's first breath in over 2 centuries was a ragged gasp that echoed through the chamber. Her second was a curse that would have made a ship's engineer proud. Her third brought with it the flood of memories that explained exactly where she was and why she was breathing again. Status report, she croaked, her voice rough from disuse. The artificial intelligence known as AEGIS responded immediately, its voice filtering through speakers that surrounded the resurrection chamber. Admiral Vasquez, welcome back. Current date is October 15th, 2387. Local time 1422 Luna Standard. Helena sat up slowly, her body protesting every movement as circulation returned to muscles that had been still for far too long. The chamber's medical systems had done their work well. She felt like she had just recovered from a particularly brutal training exercise rather than actual death. How long was I out, Aegis? 216 years, 4 months, 12 days, 6 hours, and 37 minutes. Shit. Helena swung her legs over the side of the chamber, testing her balance. What activated the protocol? Quantum distress signal from New Eden Colony, Kepler Battery Alpha Authentication Codes. Signal carries priority alpha authentication codes consistent with human civilians under direct military attack. The words hit Helena like a physical blow. She had died believing that humanity's long war was over, that the treaties would hold, that her sacrifice and the sacrifice of millions like her had finally bought peace for the human race. The resurrection protocol was only supposed to activate if that peace was broken. Who attacked them? Unknown. The signal originated from civilian communication array, not military installation. Attackers are using unidentified technology not present in current Galactic Coalition databases. Helena stood, her legs shaky but functional. Around the resurrection chamber, holographic displays were already materializing, showing tactical data that made her trained eye assess threats and opportunities automatically. The information was sparse but troubling. Current status of human military forces? Minimal. Following the Treaty of Centauri, human military was reduced to system defense forces only. Total active personnel, approximately 50,000 across all human systems. No deep space combat capabilities. Helena felt a cold smile cross her face. The politicians had done exactly what she had expected them to do after the war ended. They had dismantled the very forces that had won their freedom. Typical. Current status of the fleet? Terran Defense Fleet remains in deep storage, Alpha Priority Preservation Protocol. All vessels fully operational, awaiting crew revival and deployment authorization. We ask. The holographic displays shifted, showing vessel classifications and deployment readiness. Helena studied the data with the eye of someone who had commanded the greatest military force in human history. What she saw made her smile widen. Fleet composition: 1,200 heavy cruisers, 800 battle carriers, 400 dreadnought-class vessels, 200 siege platforms, and 64 Omega-class strategic deterrent ships. Total complement: 4.7 million personnel in stasis. Estimated revival time: 70 to 2 hours for full operational status. Helena looked at the numbers and felt something that had been dead for over 2 centuries come alive in her chest. Not bloodlust. She had never been that kind of soldier. But a sense of purpose that burned like cold fire. Someone had attacked human civilians. Someone had broken the one rule that everyone in the galaxy knew never to break. They were about to learn why that rule existed. Authorization for fleet revival, Admiral? Helena looked around the chamber that had been her tomb for over 200 years. On the walls, carved into the lunar rock itself, were the names of every human who had died in the hegemony wars. Millions of names, millions of people who had sacrificed everything to ensure that humanity would never again be helpless against alien aggression. Their sacrifice had just been validated. Full revival protocol authorized. Priority Alpha deployment. And AEGIS? Yes, Admiral. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the treaty is suspended as of now, and the Terran Defense Fleet is resuming active status. Admiral Helena Vasquez commanding. Message sent, Admiral. However, I should inform you that current Earth Command may not recognize your authority. The Terran Defense Fleet was officially disbanded under the Treaty of Centauri. Protector, Helena laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Aegis, show me the organizational chart for current human military command. The display changed, showing the neat hierarchy of the Human Systems Defense Force. Admirals and generals, who had never fought anything more dangerous than pirates and smugglers. Officers whose greatest challenge was negotiating trade disputes and maintaining patrol schedules. Colds for the fleet. A new display appeared, showing a complex web of security protocols and authentication requirements. At the center of the web was a single authorization code, one that had never been changed because no one alive remembered it existed. Helena Vasquez, Admiral of the Fleet Terran Defense Command. Authorization: absolute. I think they'll recognize my authority just fine, AHS. How long until the first ships are operational? Dreadnought Prometheus and her escort squadron will be ready for departure in 6 hours. Full battle group deployment available in 36 hours. Good. Plot a course for the Kepler 442 system. D. Maximum burn. Admiral, that will require revealing the fleet's existence to current human leadership. The political ramifications, Helena interrupted, can kiss my dead ass. Someone attacked our people. That's all I need to know. She walked out of the resurrection chamber and into a corridor that stretched into darkness in both directions. Emergency lighting activated as she moved, revealing walls lined with thousands of similar chambers. Inside each one lay a member of the Terran Defense Fleet, the finest military force humanity had ever created. They died for their species once. Now they would have the chance to do it again. As she walked toward the command center, Helena could hear the facility coming alive around her. Fusion reactors spinning up to full power, atmospheric systems activating, computer networks that had been dormant for centuries beginning to process the massive amounts of data needed to coordinate a military operation across interstellar distances. The command center was exactly as she had left it, though everything was covered in a thin layer of dust that the automated systems hadn't quite managed to prevent. The massive holotank in the center of the room flickered to life as she approached, showing a real-time tactical display of known space. The human territories looked pathetically small compared to what Helena remembered from the war years. A handful of star systems scattered across a small section of the local arm, surrounded by the vast territories of the Galactic Coalition members. But size wasn't everything. Helena had learned that lesson during the Hegemony Wars, when humanity's relatively tiny fleet had carved through alien armadas 10 times their size. AEGIs, show me everything we know about the attackers. The display zoomed in on the Kepler 442 system, highlighting the colony world and the ships that had attacked it. The tactical analysis was sparse. No energy signatures on file, no design patterns matching known alien technologies, no communication intercepts. Analysis suggests the attacking force consists of approximately 40 vessels of unknown classification. These are consistent with advanced plasma weapons and exotic matter shields. Estimated threat level, moderate to high. Helena studied the data, her tactical mind automatically calculating force requirements and deployment strategies. 40 ships was a significant force for attacking a defenseless colony, but it was nothing compared to what the fleet could bring to bear. How long until those ships can reach the next human system? Unknown. Without knowing their propulsion capabilities, I cannot calculate their potential range or speed. That was the problem with fighting an unknown enemy. Too many variables, too many assumptions that could prove fatal. Helena had learned during the war never to underestimate an opponent, especially one willing to break a 3,000-year-old treaty. Time to reach New Eden at maximum burn? 47 hours for the advanced squadron. 72 hours for the main battle group. Too long. The colony would be completely overrun by then. Its population either dead or captured. But Helena had learned another lesson during the war. Sometimes you couldn't save everyone. Sometimes the best you could do was make sure their deaths were avenged. Send a priority message to all human systems. Full military alert. Activate all system defense platforms and evacuate non-essential civilians to hardened shelters. Someone just opened a war they're not prepared to fight. As she spoke, thousands of stasis chambers throughout the facility began their revival sequences. The greatest military force in human history was waking up from the longest sleep in the galaxy's recorded history. Men and women who had fought battles among the stars, who had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, who had chosen death over defeat and were now being given a chance to serve again. Admiral Helena Vasquez stood in the command center of Luna Command and felt the weight of 4.7 million lives settling onto her shoulders. They had trusted her once to lead them into battle against an enemy that outnumbered them 1,000 to 1. She had not failed them then. She would not fail them now. Just open a channel to the fleet. Channel open, Admiral. Helena looked at the tactical display, at the tiny human territories surrounded by potential enemies, at the unknown ships that had dared to attack her people. When she spoke, her voice carried across quantum communication networks to every ship in the vast armada that was slowly awakening. This is Admiral Helena Vasquez to all fleet personnel. Welcome back to the war. And a voices in perfect unison for humanity. In the deepest vaults of Luna Command, fusion reactors that had been built to power a war machine. Shipyards that had been built to power a war machine began cycling up to full output. Shipyards that had been sealed for 3 centuries started preparing for full-scale production. Weapons that could crack planets began their activation sequences. And in the darkness between the stars, something that had been sleeping for 3,000 years began to move. The Zephyrian Empire had broken the one rule that everyone in the galaxy knew never to break. They had attacked humans. Now they were going to learn why that rule existed. Captain Marcus Webb opened his eyes for the first time in the 1993 years and immediately knew something was very, very wrong. The first clue was that he was breathing. The second was that the stasis chamber around him was cycling through revival protocols that were only supposed to activate under one specific circumstance: war. Marcus sat up slowly, his body responding sluggishly to commands as circulation returned to muscles that had been inactive for nearly 2 centuries. Around him, in the massive resurrection bay of the dreadnought Prometheus, hundreds of other chambers were humming to life. The soft blue glow of stasis fields was being replaced by the harsh white light of full activation. His crew was waking up. "Computer, status report," he said, his voice rough and hoarse. "Captain Webb, welcome back to active duty. Current date, October 15th, 2387, Lunar Standard Time. Revival authorized by Admiral Helena Vasquez under Priority Alpha War Protocols." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. Helena was alive. After all these years, after everything they had been through together, the old witch had actually done it. She had found a way to bring them all back. Casualty report on crew revival? 0 casualties. All personnel are responding normally to revival procedures. Medical teams report full restoration of biological functions across all crew members. That was impossible. This revival always resulted in some casualties, especially after periods longer than 50 years. The fact that everyone was coming back intact after nearly 2 centuries suggested improvements to the technology that Marcus hadn't known existed. The ship status. Prometheus is fully operational. All systems green. Reactor at 90% and climbing. Weapons systems online. Navigation ready. Current location, Luna Command Deep Storage Facility. Craft. Marcus swung his legs over the side of the stasis chamber and stood carefully. His body felt strange. Not weak exactly, but different somehow. Stronger than he remembered being when he had entered stasis. The revival process had done more than just preserve his life. It had somehow enhanced it. Process. Around him, his crew was going through the same process. 2,000 of the finest military personnel humanity had ever produced, all of them volunteers for the Deep Sleep Protocol. All of them chosen not just for their skills, but for their absolute dedication to protecting human life. Commander Sarah Kim, his executive officer, was already on her feet and checking the status displays. She caught his eye and nodded grimly. "Captain, we're receiving tactical updates from Luna Command. It's not good news." "Show me." The main display materialized in front of them, showing a real-time tactical overview of human space. Marcus studied the data with eyes that had seen some of the bloodiest battles in galactic history. What he saw made his stomach clench. "New Eden colony is gone," Sarah reported. "Complete communications blackout as of 6 hours ago. Unknown hostile force. Estimated strength 40 vessels. No survivors confirmed." Marcus looked at the tactical display and felt something cold and familiar settle into his chest. The anger was still there, even after all these years. The cold, controlled fury that had made him one of the most feared ship commanders in the fleet. Who did it? Unknown. The attackers aren't in any coalition database. EGIS is running analysis, but preliminary reports suggest a completely new faction. Or an old one, Marcus said quietly. He had fought in the hegemony wars, had seen what happened when alien species decided that humanity was a threat to be eliminated rather than a neighbor to be tolerated. The Treaty of Centauri was supposed to have ended all that, but treaties were just pieces of paper. They only worked as long as everyone agreed to honor them. Time to full operational status? 4 hours for the ship. The rest of the squadron is on a similar timeline. Marcus nodded and began walking toward the bridge. As he moved through the corridors of the Prometheus, he could see his crew taking their positions with the practiced efficiency of people who had done this thousands of times before. They were older now. The stasis process couldn't completely stop aging, but they moved with the same deadly precision that had made the Terran Defense Fleet legendary. The bridge was exactly as he had left it, though everything gleamed with a cleanliness that suggested the automated systems had been maintaining the ship perfectly for all these years. The command chair felt familiar beneath him as he settled into position, muscle memory guiding his hands to controls that he had used to fight battles across dozens of star systems. AEGIs, connect me to Admiral Vasquez. Connection established, Captain. Helena's face appeared on the main screen, and Marcus felt a complicated mix of emotions looking at her. She looked exactly as she had the day she died. The revival process had restored her to the physical state she had been in at the moment of clinical termination. But her eyes held the weight of all the years between then and now. Marcus, good to see you breathing again. Admiral, good to see you commanding again. What's our situation? Bad and getting worse. Someone just kicked over the Hornets' nest, and we're the Hornets. I need you and your squadron ready for immediate deployment to Kepler 442. How immediate? Yesterday would be nice. Tomorrow is the latest I can give you. Marcus called up the tactical displays on his command screens. The journey to Kepler 442 would normally take 2 weeks with conventional propulsion, but the Prometheus wasn't using conventional propulsion. We can make it in 18 hours if we push the quantum drives, he said after a moment. But that's going to light us up on every sensor array in this sector of space. Good. I want everyone to know we're coming. Time for the galaxy to remember what happens when you mess with humans. Christian. Marcus smiled grimly. Helena hadn't changed. She still believed that the best defense was an overwhelming offense, and that the best way to end a war was to make it so costly for your enemies that they never wanted to fight you again.
What about the rest of the fleet? Main battle group will follow 6 hours behind you.
I want your squadron to reach the system first and assess the situation. If there are survivors, get them out. If there aren't, Helena's expression hardened. Make sure whoever did this regrets it.
Understood, Admiral. Any rules of engagement?
The same rules we always had, Marcus. Protect human life. Destroy anything that threatens human life. Be creative about how you interpret threatens. The connection ended, and Marcus turned to his executive officer. How long until we can launch? 3 hours, Captain. Engineering reports that the quantum drives are cycling up normally, but they want time to run full diagnostics. It's been a while since these systems were tested. Marcus nodded. 3 hours to prepare for a battle that would announce to the galaxy that humanity was no longer the peaceful farming civilization that had signed the Treaty of Centauri. 3 hours to get ready to show the universe why the Terran Defense Fleet had been the most feared military force in known space. All hands, this is the captain, he announced over the ship's communication system. We are returning to active duty under war protocols. Our mission is to investigate the attack on New Eden Colony and respond appropriately. I know you all have questions about how long we've been in stasis and what's happened to the galaxy while we were sleeping. I have those same questions. But right now, none of that matters. Attack. What matters is that someone attacked our people. Someone decided that humans were an acceptable target. We're going to remind them why that's always been a bad idea. He paused, looking around the bridge at faces he had trusted with his life countless times before. This is what we trained for. This is why we volunteered to die for our species. Today, we get the chance to live for them instead. Departments report readiness status in 2 hours. Dismissed. As his crew moved to their tasks, Marcus pulled up the personnel files for his squadron. 6 Dreadnought-class ships, each one carrying 2,000 crew members, each one capable of engaging entire fleets single-handedly. The Prometheus was the flagship, but the other ships in his command were equally formidable: Retribution, Vengeance, Defiance, Resolve, and Indomitable. The names weren't chosen randomly. They represented the core values of the Terran Defense Fleet. Never give up, never give in. Never let an attack on humanity go unanswered. Marcus began reviewing the tactical capabilities of his ships, updating himself on weapon systems and defensive measures that had been cutting-edge technology when he entered stasis, the quantum drives that could move his ships across interstellar distances in hours instead of weeks. Occasion. the plasma cannons that could punch through any known shielding, the exotic matter torpedoes that could crack the crust of a planet. But the real weapon wasn't the technology, it was the crew. Every person on his ships had volunteered for the deep sleep protocol knowing they might never wake up. They had chosen to die so that future generations of humanity would be protected. That level of dedication couldn't be manufactured or programmed. It had to be earned through shared sacrifice and absolute trust. Marcus had served with most of these people for decades before the stasis protocols were activated. He had fought beside them, bled with them, watched some of them die and somehow come back to fight again. They weren't just his crew, they were his family. And someone had just attacked their species. "Captain," Sarah called from her station. "We're receiving quantum communications from the other ships in the squadron. All vessels report nominal revival status and full operational readiness." "Any word from the other battle groups?" "Admiral Vasquez reports that Battle Group Omega is cycling up normally. Battle Group Alpha has encountered some mechanical issues with 2 of their vessels, but nothing that will affect deployment timeline." Marcus did quick mental calculations. Battle Group Omega consisted of 20 heavy cruisers and their escort vessels, enough firepower to level a small moon. Battle Group Alpha was even larger, with 30 vessels including some of the most powerful ships in the fleet. This end was about to face a military force that could conquer solar systems. "Engineering reports all systems green," Sarah continued. "Quantum drives are ready for startup sequence. We can launch on your order, Captain." Days. Marcus looked at the tactical displays one more time, studying the route to Kepler 442 and the estimated positions of the hostile vessels. 18 hours to reach the system. 18 hours to prepare for a battle that would either end this conflict quickly or escalate it into something much larger. Either way, the galaxy was about to remember why attacking humans was considered the deadliest mistake any species could make. "All ships, this is Prometheus. Prepare for launch. Destination, Kepler. 42 system, maximum burn authorized." The dreadnought Prometheus rose from its berth in the Luna Command facility for the first time in over 2 centuries. Its quantum drives flared to life, bending space-time around the massive vessel and allowing it to slip between dimensions. Behind it, 5 other ships of equal power followed in perfect formation. The Terran Defense Fleet was operational again. And someone was going to pay for making that necessary. Supreme Admiral Thekvar of the Zephyrian Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. The human colony called New Eden had fallen in less than 6 hours, exactly as his intelligence reports had predicted. The primitive farming world had offered no meaningful resistance, its population scattered to the winds or captured for processing. It had been almost disappointingly easy. The Zephyrians were apex predators from a world where evolution had produced only hunters and prey. Their society was built on the concept of strength through conquest, and they had expanded across 47 star systems by applying overwhelming force to anyone who opposed them. Ability of age colonies represented an opportunity, fertile worlds populated by a species that seemed incapable of defending itself. "Status report on the colony pacification," Thekvar ordered, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that marked him as a member of the warrior caste. Fleet Commander Zendar consulted his tactical displays. "All primary objectives secured, Supreme Admiral. Colonial government centers have been neutralized. Infrastructure is intact and ready for occupation. Estimated population capture, 73%. And the remaining 27% scattered across the wilderness areas. Gentai. Search teams are conducting sweep operations. Resistance has been minimal." Thekvar nodded approvingly. The operation was proceeding exactly according to plan. Intelligence had indicated that humans were a peaceful species, more concerned with agriculture and trade than military preparedness. The conquest of their outer colonies would provide the Zephyrian Empire with valuable agricultural worlds, while demonstrating to the Galactic Coalition that the old treaty boundaries were no longer relevant. "Any response from other human settlements?" "Negative, Supreme Admiral. We are monitoring all communication frequencies. The humans appear to be maintaining communication silence." That was puzzling. Most species would have immediately contacted their central government when one of their colonies was attacked. The fact that the humans weren't sending distress calls suggested either that their communication networks were more primitive than expected, or that they simply didn't care about their outer settlements. Either possibility reinforced Thekvar's assessment that humans were not a serious threat. The Supreme Admiral, the communications officer announced, "We are receiving a transmission from an unknown source. The signal appears to be originating from outside the system. Display it." The main screen shifted to show a communication channel filled with static. Gradually, the interference cleared to reveal a face that made Thekvar's blood chill. Being on the screen appeared to be human, but there was something about its eyes that suggested depths of experience that no civilian should possess. "This is Admiral Helena Vasquez of the Terran Defense Fleet," the human said, her voice carrying an authority that seemed to fill the bridge. "You have attacked a human settlement in violation of the Treaty of Centauri. You have exactly 1 hour to withdraw from the Kepler-42 system and release all human captives. Failure to comply will result in military action." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Thekvar stared at the blank screen, processing what he had just heard. Terran Defense Fleet? That was impossible. Intelligence reports had been clear that humanity had no significant military forces. Their few ships were system defense vessels at best, completely inadequate for interstellar operations. Commander Zendar, analysis of that transmission. "The signal originated from outside our sensor range, Supreme Admiral. Quantum encryption suggests advanced communication technology. However, I detect no ships in the system other than our own fleet." "Could it be a bluff?" "Possible, Supreme Admiral. Humans are known to use deception in their diplomatic interactions. This could be an attempt to negotiate from a position of imagined strength." Thekvar considered the options. Withdrawing from the system would be seen as weakness by his own forces and by the Empire's leadership. The conquest of the human colonies was meant to demonstrate Zephyrian strength and determination. Backing down at the first sign of resistance would undermine everything the operation was meant to accomplish. Send a response. "Tell this Admiral Vasquez that the Zephyrian Empire does not negotiate with inferior species. The colony now belongs to us, and its population will be processed according to our standards." Lucifer hesitated. "Supreme Admiral, perhaps we should consider." "Send the message, Commander." The response was transmitted into the void, carrying Thekvar's defiance across the quantum communication networks. He felt a surge of satisfaction at having dealt firmly with what was obviously an empty threat. Humans had no military capability that could challenge the Zephyrian fleet. 40 minutes later, space began to ripple. The first sign was a gravitational distortion that registered on the sensor arrays as a minor anomaly. The second was a series of quantum fluctuations that suggested something massive was moving through dimensions that shouldn't have been accessible to any known technology. The third was the emergence of 6 ships that defied everything the Zephyrians thought they knew about human capabilities. "Supreme Admiral," the sensor operator's voice was high with panic. "6 large vessels have just emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system. A unknown configuration, energy signatures unlike anything in our databases." Thekvar looked at the tactical display and felt his confidence begin to waver. The ships were enormous, each one easily the size of his flagship. But it wasn't their size that worried him. It was their design. These weren't civilian vessels or even system defense ships. They were clearly warships built for one purpose: destroying other ships. Analysis: vessels appear to be of human origin based on design aesthetics, but the technology level is far beyond what our intelligence reports suggested. Energy output from their power plants exceeds our own capabilities by a significant margin. How significant? Each vessel appears to be capable of generating more power than our entire fleet combined. Thekvar felt a cold certainty settling in his stomach. This was not what intelligence had promised him. These were not the primitive farmers he had been expecting to face. Communications from the lead vessel, Supreme Admiral. On screen. The same human appeared on the display, but now she was clearly on a military bridge surrounded by crew members in uniform. The casual authority she had displayed earlier had been replaced by something much more dangerous. "Supreme Admiral Thekvar of the Zephyrian Empire, she said, consulting a display beside her chair. B. I am Admiral Helena Vasquez, commanding the advanced squadron of the Terran Defense Fleet. You were given 1 hour to withdraw from this system. That time is expired. Human, you are in no position to make demands. Your ships are outnumbered more than 6 to 1. The human smiled, and Thekbar suddenly understood what prey felt like when facing a predator that had no intention of showing mercy. Supreme Admiral, let me introduce you to the dreadnought Prometheus and her sister ships. Each one is capable of engaging your entire fleet simultaneously. Each one carries enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Each one is crewed by people who have been fighting interstellar wars since before your species achieved spaceflight. And a tactical display updated showing new information about the human ships. The data was impossible to believe. A picture that could punch through any known armor. Shields that could deflect planet-killing impacts. Engines that could move vessels across interstellar distances in hours. You're lying, Thekvar said, but his voice lacked conviction. One last chance, Supreme Admiral. Withdraw now, and this ends here. Stay, and we will show you why attacking humans is considered a capital offense by every military force in the galaxy. Thekvar looked around his bridge at officers who had conquered dozens of worlds, who had never known defeat. He thought about the reputation of the Zephyrian Empire, built on an unbroken string of military victories. He thought about what withdrawal would mean for his career and his standing in the warrior caste. We do not retreat from inferior opponents, he announced. All ships, battle formation. Prepare to engage. The human's smile widened. Thank you for making this simple. All ships, weapons free, target their command vessels first. What happened next became the subject of tactical analysis in every military academy in the galaxy for the next century. The engagement that would come to be known as the Battle of New Eden lasted exactly 17 minutes and 43 seconds. When it ended, the Zephyrian fleet had been completely destroyed. The Prometheus and her sister ships moved through the enemy formation like sharks among minnows. Their weapons reached across impossible distances to strike with pinpoint accuracy. Their shields absorbed everything the Zephyrians could throw at them without showing any sign of strain. Their coordination was perfect, each ship supporting the others in a dance of destruction that spoke of countless battles fought together. Supreme Admiral Thekvar spent his last moments watching his flagship's bridge explode around him, finally understanding why the old treaty had included that one simple rule: never attack humans. Admiral Helena Vasquez watched the destruction of the Zephyrian fleet with professional satisfaction. It had been a long time since she had commanded ships in actual combat, but the skills were apparently like riding a bicycle. Once learned, never forgotten. Webb, status report. All enemy vessels destroyed, Admiral. No damage to squadron vessels. We are detecting 17 escape pods scattered throughout the system. Recovery operations? Already in progress. We will have them aboard within the hour. Helena nodded. The survivors would be interrogated, then returned to their home system with a message for their leadership. The message would be simple. Attacking humans had consequences, and those consequences would be delivered by ships that could appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. Any word from the surface? Search and rescue teams have located approximately 3,000 survivors scattered across the continent. Medical teams are providing assistance. Casualty count is still being compiled. Yup, Helena felt a familiar weight settle on her shoulders. 3,000 survivors, out of a population of nearly 50,000. The mathematics of military operations were always brutal, but that didn't make them any easier to accept. Admiral, Captain Webb continued, we're receiving quantum transmissions from Luna Command. Approach that battle groups Alpha and Omega are en route to begin pacification operations in Zephyrian space. How long until they arrive? 72 hours to reach the primary Zephyrian systems. Helena studied the tactical displays, calculating force requirements and strategic objectives. The Zephyrian Empire controlled 47 star systems, with a total population in the billions. Battle groups Alpha and Omega represented enough firepower to conquer them all, but conquest had never been humanity's goal. Capacity. Send a message to Admiral Chen. Tell her to hold position at the edge of Zephyrian space until further notice. We're going to give them a chance to do this the easy way. Yes, Admiral. Helena looked at the debris field that had been the Zephyrian fleet and felt something she hadn't experienced in centuries. Hope. The universe had forgotten what humans were capable of when threatened. Today, they had been reminded. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. 3 months after the Battle of New Eden, Ambassador Krelthos of the Galactic Coalition sat in his office, staring at reports that made no sense. But according to his intelligence networks, humanity had gone from a minor agricultural civilization to the dominant military power in known space in less than 72 hours. It was impossible. It violated everything the Coalition understood about technological development, military organization, and industrial capacity. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The Zephyrian Empire, which had conquered 47 star systems over the course of 2 centuries, had surrendered unconditionally after their entire home fleet was destroyed by a single human battle group. The surrender had taken place in the Zephyrian capital system, witnessed by representatives from a dozen different species. The human ships had appeared without warning, dictated terms, and departed just as suddenly. The terms of surrender were unlike anything in galactic history. The Zephyrians would withdraw from all conquered territories, pay reparations to displaced populations, and submit to monitoring by human observers. Any future aggression against any species would result in the complete destruction of Zephyrian civilization. The most disturbing part wasn't the harshness of the terms. It was the fact that the Zephyrian High Command had agreed to them immediately, without negotiation or protest. Who had never backed down from a fight in their entire history. What had they seen in that system that convinced them to surrender their entire empire? Ambassador, his aide announced over the communication system, Admiral Helena Vasquez is here for your appointment. Krelthos felt his breathing apparatus flutter with nervousness. He had been requesting a meeting with human leadership for weeks, ever since the reports of the Terran Defense Fleet had started circulating through diplomatic channels. The fact that they had finally agreed to send a representative was either very good news or very bad news. Send her in. The human who entered his office was not what he had expected. She appeared to be middle-aged by human standards, with gray hair and lines around her eyes that suggested extensive experience. But she moved with the precision of a trained warrior, and her gaze held depths that reminded Krelthos uncomfortably of apex predators from his homeworld. Ambassador Krelthos, she said, offering a gesture that the translator interpreted as respectful greeting, I'm Admiral Helena Vasquez. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Admiral Vasquez, please sit. I admit I have many questions about recent events. The human settled into the chair designed for her species, though Krelthos noticed she maintained perfect posture and kept her hands positioned where they could move quickly if necessary. Even in a diplomatic setting, she was prepared for combat. I'm sure you do. The emergence of the fleet has been something of a surprise for everyone. That's an understatement, Admiral. Our records indicate that humanity dismantled its military forces under the Treaty of Centauri. Where did these ships come from? Helena smiled, and Krelthos was reminded why so many species found human expressions difficult to interpret. The Treaty of Centauri required us to disband our active military forces. It didn't say anything about reserve forces or deep storage facilities. You're saying these ships have been hidden for 3 centuries? Not hidden, preserved. There's a difference. Krelthos activated his personal recording device, ensuring that this conversation would be available to the Coalition leadership for analysis. Admiral, I need to understand the scope of what we're dealing with. How many ships does humanity have in these reserve forces? Enough. That's not an answer, Admiral. Helena leaned forward slightly, her expression becoming more serious. Ambassador, let me be clear about something. Humanity signed the Treaty of Centauri because we were tired of war. We wanted to build farms, raise families, explore the galaxy peacefully. We kept the fleet in reserve because we're not stupid enough to believe that peace lasts forever. The Zephyrian attack proved us right. So now we have a choice. We can go back to the old way of doing things, where strong species prey on weak ones and everyone lives in fear, or we can establish a new order based on the principle that aggression against civilian populations will not be tolerated. Krelthos felt his breathing apparatus accelerate. You're talking about fundamentally altering galactic politics. I'm talking about enforcing the basic principles that the Coalition claims to support but has never been willing to enforce. No more wars of conquest. No more enslaving of weaker species. Doesn't masquerading as territorial expansion? And humanity will be the enforcement mechanism? Humanity will be one enforcement mechanism? We're hoping that other species will join us in creating a mutual defense compact, an organization that actually has the power to stop aggressors instead of just issuing strongly worded statements. Krelthos consulted his notes, trying to process the implications of what he was hearing. The coalition has maintained peace for over a millennium through diplomatic means. The coalition has maintained the appearance of peace while dozens of species have been enslaved or exterminated by stronger neighbors. The hegemony wars 300 years ago should have been stopped before they began, but the coalition was too weak to intervene. That's not peace, Ambassador. That's just delayed warfare. Helena activated a holographic projector, showing a tactical display of the local galactic arm. Red zones marked areas of active conflict, yellow zones indicated territorial disputes, and green zones showed regions of stable peace. There was far more red and yellow than Krelthos had expected. This is what peace looks like under the current system, Helena continued. Constant low-level warfare between smaller species, while the major powers maintain enough balance to avoid direct confrontation. We're proposing something different. The display changed, showing the same region with blue zones indicating areas under mutual defense protection. The coverage was comprehensive, extending to even the smallest and most vulnerable colonies. This is what we can accomplish if we work together. No species large enough to threaten others. No species small enough to be threatened. Everyone protected, everyone contributing according to their abilities. Krelthos studied the display, his mind racing through the political implications. The major powers will never agree to such restrictions on their sovereignty. The major powers will do what they've always done, whatever serves their interests. If it's in their interest to maintain peaceful coexistence, that's what they'll choose. If it's in their interest to pursue aggressive expansion, we'll make sure that's no longer a viable option. You're talking about imposing your will on civilizations that have existed for millennia. Helena's expression hardened. Ambassador, I fought in wars where billions of sentient beings died because diplomacy failed and military force was the only option left. I've watched entire species choose extinction rather than surrender their freedom to conquerors. I've seen what happens when good people do nothing while evil flourishes. She stood up, moving to the window that looked out over the coalition capital city. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We want to farm our worlds, raise our children, and explore the stars in peace. But we've learned that peace only exists when it's protected by people willing to fight for it. 3 months ago, someone decided that human civilians were acceptable targets. Today, they learned otherwise. The next species that makes that mistake will learn the same lesson. And eventually, everyone will understand that the cost of aggression is too high to pay. Krelthos felt a chill run through his body. And opposes this new order you're proposing. Alina turned back to face him, her expression calm but implacable. Then the coalition will discover the same thing the Zephyrian Empire discovered, that humanity keeps its promises, both the good ones and the bad ones. The silence stretched between them for long moments before Helena returned to her chair. But I'm hoping it doesn't come to that, Ambassador. The coalition has always claimed to stand for peace and justice. Now you have the opportunity to actually enforce those principles instead of just talking about them. What exactly are you proposing? Helena activated the holographic projector again, this time showing organizational charts and treaty frameworks. A mutual defense compact between all willing species. Standardized protection protocols for civilian populations. Joint task forces to respond to aggression anywhere in signatory space, and most importantly, the military capability to actually stop aggressors instead of just condemning them after the fact. Humanity would provide the initial military framework and training. Other species would contribute according to their capabilities: ships, personnel, intelligence, logistical support. The goal is to create a force that no single aggressor could challenge, making warfare too costly to be a viable option for territorial expansion. Krelthos studied the proposals, his mind cataloging potential objections and complications. The logistics alone would be staggering. The political challenges even more so. The alternative is what we had 3 months ago, Helena replied. A system where peaceful species live in constant fear of their aggressive neighbors, where the strong prey on the weak and where everyone hopes that someone else will deal with the problem. Admiral, I need to ask directly, Is this an ultimatum? Helena considered the question carefully before answering. Ambassador, humanity spent 300 years believing that we could achieve peace through cooperation and good intentions. We gave up our military, focused on agriculture and trade, tried to be the kind of neighbors we wanted to have. It worked right up until someone decided we were easy targets. At that point, cooperation and good intentions weren't enough. We had to fall back on the old ways of ensuring security, overwhelming force, and the will to use it. She leaned forward, her gaze meeting his directly. This isn't an ultimatum, Ambassador. It's an opportunity. We're offering to share the burden of maintaining galactic peace with anyone willing to contribute. But make no mistake, we will maintain that peace, with or without the Coalition's cooperation. The question you need to ask yourself is whether the Coalition wants to be part of the solution or part of the problem. As Helena left the ambassador's office, Krelthus activated his emergency communication array and began composing a message to the Coalition High Council. The message would travel across the galaxy to representatives of hundreds of species, all of whom would need to make the same choice that he was recommending to his own leadership. The age of humanity's peaceful isolation was over. The age of human-enforced galactic peace was beginning, and everyone would have to decide which side of that peace they wanted to be on. In the depths of space, the Terran Defense Fleet maintained its patrols, ensuring that the lesson of New Eden was remembered across the galaxy. The ships moved silently through the darkness between stars, no longer hidden but no longer peaceful either. They were the guardians of a new order, the enforcers of a promise that humanity had made to itself 3 centuries earlier. Never again would human civilians be acceptable targets. The galaxy was learning to live with that promise, one system at a time. And in the deepest vaults of Luna Command, Admiral Helena Vasquez looked at tactical displays showing a galaxy slowly accepting the reality of human military supremacy and allowed herself to hope that her people would never again need to wake the sleeping fleet. But she kept the resurrection protocols active, just in case.